Good evening. It's Thursday, 30th of January, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Tragedy in DC. American Airlines jet crashes into Potomac after collision with Black Hawk. Congo crisis. Rwanda-backed rebels advance in eastern Congo, raising fears of prolonged conflict. Royal joy. Princess Beatrice welcomes baby girl Athena Elizabeth Rose.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Prashansa Gunawardana.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us on World News Tonight. We begin with tragic news from the USA. An American Airlines flight with 64 people crashed into the Potomac after colliding with a US Army Black Hawk near Reagan National Airport. Authorities have yet to confirm casualties, but reports indicate at least 18 bodies recovered with no survivors so far.
Multiple deaths have been reported after a passenger jet and U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided mid-air and crashed into the Potomac River Wednesday night near Reagan Washington National Airport. Police said several agencies were involved in a search and rescue operation in the river. The airport said late on Wednesday that all takeoffs and landings had been halted as emergency personnel responded. The Federal Aviation Authority said PSA Airlines was operating a regional flight for American Airlines, which had departed from Wichita, Kansas. American Airlines said 60 passengers and 4 crew were on the plane. A U.S. official said 3 soldiers were aboard the helicopter. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas said on social media that, quote, "We know there are fatalities," though he did not say how many. NBC reported that 4 people had been recovered alive from the river, while the Washington Post said multiple bodies had been pulled from the water. The National Transportation Safety Board said it was gathering more information on the incident.
An update from the Maha Kumbh Mela festival in India. Bathing has resumed following the tragic stampede which reported claimedly dozens of lives. Prime Minister Modi has offered condolences to the victims' families and wished the injured a speedy recovery as millions continue to gather for one of the most sacred events in the Hindu calendar.
At the confluence of the sacred Ganges and Yamuna rivers, barricades were erected to manage millions of pilgrims. They came to bathe in the holy waters for Maha Kumbh Mela festival in Prayagraj. But before dawn on Wednesday morning, the crowd surged forwards and the railings gave way. Eyewitnesses spoke of dozens of casualties. Victims were lifted into stretchers and ferried away, their loved ones following desperately behind. The Hindu festival is one of the world's largest gatherings, occurring every 12 years in Uttar Pradesh. Makeshift tents, toilets and medical facilities were set up on the banks of the Ganges to accommodate the visitors, with up to 100 million people expected on Wednesday and some 400 million during the entire 6-week festival. The pilgrims travel from all across India to take a dip in the holy spot, in belief that it will cleanse their sins and help attain salvation.
Hundreds of millions across Asia are welcoming the New Year of Snake as Lunar Year celebrations begin. The biggest holiday in China, it's also marked in several other countries, bringing a massive travel rush as families reunite, many for the only time this year.
China rang in the Year of the Snake with the annual Spring Festival Gala on state TV. Some of the biggest stars in Chinese entertainment joined hundreds of other performers for the 4-hour extravaganza at 5 venues across the country. Themed Year of the Snake, Keep Your Spirit Awake. This year's gala reached record numbers of viewers. And on New Year's Day itself, Beijingers flocked to Lama Temple to pray for prosperity at a difficult time for the Chinese economy. In Hong Kong, there was a similar sight where pilgrims made their annual visit to the city's celebrated Wang Dai Sin Taoist temple for the countdown and to make their wishes for the new year. In Taiwan, a Buddhist temple hosted President Lai Ching-te for the customary bell-ringing ceremony to usher in the Year of the Snake. The Lunar New Year is also celebrated in a number of countries in Southeast Asia. Chinese diaspora in Myanmar burned incense and prayed at Chinese temples in Yangon. Vietnam, which celebrates the Lunar New Year as Tet, marked the occasion with spectacular fireworks in each of its biggest cities. It's the start of a long week off for many people in the region, with the biggest occasion in the Chinese calendar well and truly back after the pandemic years. This year is expected to be the biggest movement of people in Chinese history, with 510 million people taking trains and 90 million getting flights over the festive period.
Syria enters a new political chapter as Ahmed al-Shara is appointed president for a transitional phase following the suspension of country's constitution. State media reports he has been granted authority to form a temporary legislative council which will govern until a new constitution is in place.
Syria's de facto leader, Ahmed al-Shara, was declared president for a transitional phase on Wednesday, allowing him to further tighten his hold on power 2 months after he led a campaign that toppled Bashar al-Assad. The decisions emerged after a meeting of military commanders who took part in the offensive against Assad, a campaign which was spearheaded by Shara's Islamist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, a former al-Qaeda affiliate. According to an announcement by military command, Shara was empowered to form a temporary legislative council and suspend the Syrian constitution. At the meeting, Shara laid out his priorities.
Fill the void of power in a legal and lawful way. Second, sustain civil peace through the pursuit of justice and prevent manifestations of retaliation.
He also vowed to rebuild state institutions, including the military and police. And he promised action on the economy, agriculture, and industry. Shara has pledged to embark on a political transition, including a national conference, an inclusive government, and eventual elections, which he said could take up to 4 years to hold. The parliament elected under Assad last year was formally dissolved. No timeline was given for the transition period or for when a new legislative body might be picked. Qatar, which backs the new administration, issued a statement welcoming the announcements. One Syria expert told Reuters the declaration had formalized Shara's status as a strongman ruler and could be intended to consolidate single-party Islamist rule.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. President Trump has ordered the expansion of a migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay, allowing space for up to 30,000 migrants. This follows the signing of the Laken-Riley Act mandating detention and potential deportation of undocumented individuals accused of certain crimes.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday ordered the expansion of a migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay.
Today, I'm also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And tough. That's a tough place to get out of.
The U.S. naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, already houses a migrant facility separate from the high-security U.S. prison for foreign terrorism suspects. It has been used on occasion for decades, including to hold Haitians and Cubans picked up at sea. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel called Trump's plan, quote, an act of brutality. New U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan said later on Wednesday that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency would run the expanded facility. He told reporters the center would be used for the, quote, worst of the worst. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said the administration was working with Congress to determine the cost of the project. The detention facility at Guantanamo Bay was set up by George W. Bush to detain foreign militant suspects following the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States. There are 15 detainees left in the prison. Trump's two Democratic predecessors, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, both sought, albeit unsuccessfully, to shut Guantanamo down. However, Trump has vowed to keep it open. Pro-refugee groups have called for the Guantanamo migrant facility to be closed and for Congress to investigate alleged abuses there.
Senate Democrats pressed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. during his confirmation hearing for Health and Human Services Secretary, challenging his controversial views on vaccines and past statements. Lawmakers questioned his role in a 2019 measles outbreak, his COVID-19 stance and potential conflicts of interest, but left largely unsatisfied by his responses.
Trump's controversial choice to, quote, make America healthy again, facing a heated confirmation hearing.
Frankly, you frighten people.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., nominated as Health and Human Services Secretary, saying his mission will be to reduce chronic diseases, which he calls a crisis.
Americans' overall health is in grievous condition. I'm not here because I want a position or a job. I have a very good life. I want to do this because we're going to fix it.
But immediately grilled by Democrats over his views on vaccines.
All of my kids are vaccinated. I am not anti-vaccine.
Including his debunked claims tying them to autism.
Senator, I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking either of those
Anybody
vaccines.
who believes that ought to look at the measles book you wrote. That's not true.
Senator Bernie Sanders asking about baby clothes sold on his former organization's website.
One of them is titled Unfaxed, Unafraid.
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
That was just a few months ago. Are you supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Kennedy saying there are too many chemicals in food, and it's making Americans sick. Today, the former Democrat turned independent, defended by Republicans.
And I have no doubt that you will be confirmed and you are going to do such a solid job for the people of this country.
Are you a conspiracy theorist? That's applied to me mainly to keep me from asking difficult questions of powerful interests.
But at one point quizzed by Republican Bill Cassidy, seen as someone who might vote no on Kennedy.
Does Medicare pay more, Medicare pay less, Medicaid pay more, Medicaid pay less? How do we do that?
I'm not exactly sure because I'm not in there.
Democrats later pressing Kennedy over his previous support for abortion rights.
When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
Right, but that isn't what you said back in New Hampshire in 2023.
Kennedy arguing the attacks are really about President Trump.
All these Democrats are opposed to me for partisan issues. They used to be my friends. Now they're against me because anything that President Trump does, any decision he makes, has to be lampooned, derided.
Palestinian families returning after the ceasefire face devastation, bombed out homes, water shortages and little electricity. Many are focused to flee again. Meanwhile, Hamas claims aid shortfalls while Israel insists deliveries are on track.
With most homes now reduced to piles of rubble, the joy felt by thousands of Palestinian families returning home after a ceasefire deal with Israel is now turning to despair. The cold reality of uninhabitable, bombed-out homes and dire shortages of basic supplies is setting in. Fahad Abu Jahum returned with his family to Jabalia from the Al-Mawazi area in South Gaza. The destruction they found was so widespread that they had no choice but to head back south.
I am displaced from Al-Mawasi in Khan Yunis. When they announced the ceasefire, they said the displaced could return north. We missed the north. My base is in the north, and my whole life is in the north in Jabalia camp. 3 days ago, we headed north, but it was destroyed. There was no life. Nothing. It's a very difficult situation.
A lack of running water forces many to queue for hours to fill plastic containers for drinking or cleaning. And at night, residential districts laid to waste by Israeli airstrikes sink into darkness. there is little electricity or fuel to operate standby generators. Most of the 650,000 people displaced from the north had re-entered Gaza City, according to Hamas authorities. Many of those returning trekked over 12 miles along the coastal highway, often carrying all their remaining belongings after months of displacement. A Hamas official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said less fuel, cooking gas and tents were brought into Gaza than agreed in ceasefire talks. Israel strongly denies this. A spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Agency that liaises with the Palestinians said that tens of thousands of tents have entered Gaza since the ceasefire, and that gas and fuel are being delivered daily and in keeping with agreements.
Rebels backed by Rwanda continue their advance in eastern Congo, capturing more towns beyond Goma in a bid to expand control. Their push into South Kivu province has raised fears of prolonged occupation while the UN scrambles to protect civilians and staff. More on the escalating conflict ahead.
On Tuesday, relative calm allowed residents to leave their homes in Goma amid a dip in the intensity of fighting. Life goes on, but differently from before. There were still sounds of gunfire and explosions in the North Kivu capital, but fewer than before. Lifeless bodies could be seen in the streets, especially in the west of the city, while the United Nations say M23 rebels fighting alongside Rwandan soldiers have taken control of its international airport, along with several other districts. Elsewhere in the city, exchanges of fire continued with the Congolese army and its allies, vying to retain control of the city. On Tuesday, a UN peacekeeper sounded the alarm about a deteriorating humanitarian situation at an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. The UN Humanitarian Affairs spokesperson has also pointed to reports of rape, gender-based violence and looting by fighters. Hundreds of thousands in Goma live in temporary camps around the city. Deprived of water and electricity in recent days, their suffering has intensified. Meanwhile, hospitals struggle to cope with a growing number of casualties.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. The Shimonoseki City Aquarium in Japan's Yamaguchi Prefecture needed to undergo renovations and was temporarily closed to the public in December 2024. Staff said the aquarium's sunfish lost his appetite after a week without guests. Their solution? Paste clothing and pictures of human faces to the wall of his tank, mimicking the hundreds of people who normally peer on the fish each day.
Aquariums can be lonely. Just ask this sunfish. The Shimonoseki City Aquarium in the Yamaguchi Prefecture, Japan, needed to undergo renovations and temporarily closed to the public in December 2024. One of the aquarium's residents, the sunfish, seemed to take the lack of human visitors hard. After a week without guests, staff said he lost his appetite. Their solution? Paste clothing and pictures of human faces to the wall of his tank, mimicking the hundreds of people who normally peer in on the fish each day. Ocean sunfish are also known as mola. They can be found in oceans all over the world, and according to National Geographic, have the distinction of being the heaviest of the bony fish. One mola can grow up to 14 feet vertically, 10 feet horizontally, and weigh in at nearly 5,000 pounds. After putting up the fake visitors, aquarium workers say the highly social fish perked back up. Just one day later, he was back to eating again.
And finally tonight, a new royal arrival. Princess Beatrice, King Charles's niece, has welcomed her second child, a baby girl named Athena Elizabeth Rose Mapelli Mozzi. Proud father Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi shared that the family is already completely besotted with their newest addition.
Britain's royal family is celebrating the birth of Princess Beatrice's second child, a baby girl named Athena Elizabeth Rose Mapelli Mozzi. Buckingham Palace announced that Beatrice gave birth at London's Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Athena weighed just 4 pounds and 5 ounces at birth. Proud father Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi shared the happy news on Instagram. calling his daughter tiny and absolutely perfect. He added that the family, including their oldest daughter, Sienna, and his son from a previous relationship, Wolfie, was already completely besotted with the newborn. Princess Beatrice, the eldest daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah, Duchess of York, is ninth in line to the British throne. She married Mapelimotsi, a property developer, in July 2020. Their first daughter, Sienna, was born in September 2021. Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles and Queen Camilla and other members of the royal family have been informed of the birth and are delighted with the news.
That's all we have for you on our rundown here at World News Tonight for this evening. We will meet you again tomorrow with more updates across the globe. Stay tuned as we've got Anuradhi Vikramasinghe joining you next on the Nightly Business Report. Before we end tonight, we'll leave you with the visuals of the Hong Kong Lunar Year Parade. Thank you for watching and good night.